For those of us who aren't familiar, what exactly is the overview effect? Well, most commonly defined, the overview effect is a cognitive shift reported by some astronauts while viewing the Earth from space.
Researchers have characterized the effect as a state of awe with self-transcending
So what does that mean? Well, there are experiences you can have that will give you feelings and insights similar to the overview effect. For example, viewing the Northern Lights, standing at the edge of the Grand Canyon, witnessing the birth of a child. People have even experienced it while skydiving or bungee jumping, climbing mountains, deep sea diving, even volunteering in disaster relief or helping out in impoverished communities. These experiences can provide a sense of perspective, interconnectedness, and a deeper appreciation for life and the universe, very similar to the way the overview effect affects astronauts.
You see how diminutive your life and concerns are compared to other things in the universe. The result is that you enjoy the life that is before you. It allows you to have inner peace.
Edward Gibson, astronaut and Skylab 4 pilot, after seeing the Earth from space for the first time. A welcome addition, a paramour of the overview effect. And Frank White, after nearly 40 years and 4 book editions, Frank is the ethereal archivist and the collector of those who experience the phenomenon firsthand, the father of the overview effect.
I am Ken Pond with Galactic Medallion, and I am sitting here today with Frank White, author of The Overview Effect. Thank you very much.
Glad to be here.
1987. I was 11 years old, and you were starting something that when we spoke before, you said people knew of this, and they know of it, present tense, but they didn't know where it came from. They didn't know the root of it. So tell me a little bit about that.
Okay, so for me, I had been interested in space exploration since I was a kid, 10 years old or so. But I was searching for a place within the space movement. And at the time in the 80s, you really needed to be technical. You needed to be a scientist, engineer, astronaut. And I discovered the Space Studies Institute, started by Gerard K. O'Neill, a physicist. And they were looking at really habitation in outer space, not just missions.
Okay.
They welcomed everybody, you know. Very early idea of space role. And I was obsessing about what it would be like to live off the planet. And I was flying cross country, looking out at the Earth. And the two things came together, the looking at the Earth and the thinking about living off the planet. I said, you know, people living off the planet would always have an overview. They could see that it's a whole system, everything's integrated and interconnected. They would experience the overview effect. That's how it began, and it's appropriate because the overview effect, first of all, is an experience of astronauts. Because I started interviewing astronauts since there weren't any future people living permanently off the planet.
Right.
They were my proxies.
Well, the ISS didn't exist, the International Space Station, right? So we didn't have permanent residents of space like we do now.
Yeah, and they're still not permanent, really. I mean, you know,
they're longer than they used to.
Yeah,
be, right?
much longer.
Yeah.
We had some experience with space stations and so on, but nobody who didn't plan to come back to Earth, or nobody who would call the moon or Mars their home. And that's why I started interviewing astronauts. But the important point to make here is that the overview effect has become a theory of what it means to live off the planet. It's become a movement to bring the overview effect down to Earth and change the consciousness of the society.
Right.
and it's become an idea, and it's become so much more than a book.
That's probably the most rewarding thing is
It
for
is.
an idea to become way more
Yeah.
than maybe you even intended it to be. Did you intend it to well, you can say yes now and get credit for it. But really, in all seriousness, that's the philosophy. I want to say the implications for us here kind of fighting and squabbling with one another, the implications of looking down and saying, this is so stupid.
Yeah.
You know, us kind of coming to our senses, growing up, as it were, as a species.
Yeah.
So did that, and I'm going to trust you to be honest, did it occur to you that it would turn into this big kind of philosophical snowball effect?
That was actually my goal. That's
Really?
what I wanted.
Okay.
I've said jokingly in many of my talks, when I published The Overview Effect, my goal was not to win a Pulitzer, not to win the Nobel Prize for Literature. And I've been very successful at not winning any prizes. I was finally given a literary award by my friends at Earthlight Foundation,
Okay.
but it took about 40 years.
Wow.
What I wanted was a revolution, and I wanted a conceptual revolution. One of my partners in those times was a guy named Jeff Stamps, and we thought of ourselves as revolutionaries. We didn't have the overview effect. We were looking for how can we create a conceptual revolution, not a political revolution, not a violent revolution, a shift in awareness. I wanted that to happen through this book, or I hoped the book would start the process. And to be quite honest, I spent 20 years thinking the revolution was not going to happen because I didn't see any movement. The book did not sell incredibly well.
Really?
No. The second and third editions were published only because of a very good person at NASA who understood the meaning of it, made sure that the AIAA took it on. It was not the normal kind of book for them.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, you would think with all these books that are, I guess what they used to call them were self-help books, right? But now they're motivational books. They're books that are designed to change your perspective,
Right.
right? You would think with the advent of Tim Robbins and all those things in the 80s that your book would be probably better than all of those put together because none of them talked about being in outer space and looking down.
I know.
Zooming out. So, but maybe there is a blessing in that where there's a kind of it's been marinating.
I mean, here's the thing. First of all, you have to trust the process.
Right.
I'm not in charge of this. I mean, I really feel like someone had to communicate what the astronauts were seeing and feeling. And it came over me. It wasn't like I was sitting in my office wondering how to get tenure at some university and I've got to come up with a really good idea.
Right.
It wasn't like that. It was more like I was taken over by some kind of cosmic process that I don't understand to this day.
Yes. And
Yeah.
by the way, artists experience this, creatives experience this, musicians.
Yeah.
And it feels as if you can't really take credit for the output, right?
I really can't.
That's what it feels like. I've heard it referred to as a flow state.
Yeah.
When
absolutely right.
Stuff is coming out of your hands, but you can't say, oh, this is something I've been working on since I was a kid, and then this other book.
Right.
You can't really say where it came from directly. So
Yeah.
there are people that relate to that. So that's even more powerful because you don't know who or what was working through you to provide this exceptional thing.
One of the first people I worked with on this whole project was a guy named David Beaver, and he funded a conference in 2007, 20 years after the book was published. And that's when I got an inkling, I think we are having an impact because about 100 people came and people were getting up and saying, your book changed my life. The Overview Effect is the most important book I ever read.
Really?
And I was starting to think, oh, that's the first indication I've had that maybe something's going on. There was no real internet. There was no instantaneous communication, so it was hard to know what was happening with the book. So David and I used to talk about it, and, you know, we said something bigger than us is making this happen. We just have to figure out how to go with it, you know? And
right.
That is still my...
Well, it's still a journey.
I'm still what's appropriate now.
Right, exactly. What's the thing to do now with it?
Yeah.
I wish I could talk to you for many hours, but you have things to do. I do want to say I dug a little and I asked your colleagues and the people that are helping. I said, what should I close with? They said that, and I thought it was perfect because it's a perfect button or close, is what do you envision for the future of humanity in space? Since it's appropriate for you to be, well, the father of the Overview Effect and people having this kind of godlike spiritual epiphany looking down on Earth for the first time and realizing everything all at once. What's your vision of the future for humanity in space? I don't want to even cheapen it by saying man in space.
What I would like to see the movement achieve is, first of all, a coming together on Earth. Because we need an Earth that works to make the evolution into the solar ecosystem work. So first, the Overview Effect works its magic on more people, and there's a shift from a psychological experience to a sociological experience, and life on Earth changes. Politics changes, behavior changes, and there's a realization that, as the astronauts say, we're all in this together. And then the idea of a unified space effort to move out into the solar ecosystem.
Right.
And for it to be a very large scale migration. Very large. And the reason is a large scale migration of people in industry could help the Earth.
Okay.
There's a lot of concern today about falling birth rates, but there are still too many people on the planet.
Right.
There's too much really obnoxious, industry.
Mm-hmm.
Our technological society is not really good for this planet. And that might bring our environmental friends into this movement, that it's helping the Earth. And then I would like to see billions of people living off-world.
Okay. So you think that, like, from what I'm hearing, it sounds like you want to just ditch the globe and put everyone on in a mass migration. Did I hear that right?
No.
Okay.
I don't want to ditch the globe.
Okay.
And that's a misunderstanding because
Good.
It sounds like I'm talking about abandoning the planet.
Right.
I'm really talking about a rebalancing. There's a book that's been written by a pretty well-known geographer named Chris Tucker, and he has analyzed the situation carefully, and he says 3 billion people is the right number to live here.
Really? That's interesting. The most efficient amount of people to live here?
It would be better for the planet if we had 3 billion people.
Just to update our viewers who may not know, how many people live on Earth right now?
8 billion.
So we're almost 3 times.
Yeah. We're living on borrowed time, according to him. And so one of the ways I close a lot of my talks is to say, leaving the planet is not abandoning it, it's an act of love. Those who go are not running away. They're doing everything they can to support Mother Earth.
They're letting it heal.
Yeah, that's what I'm advocating. And I really want to flip the script from a lot of people who think people like this group here at the conference, we're just trying to escape Earth's problems. And we're not. We're trying to help cure.
Right.
But it's nuanced. It's not simplistic.
No.
You have to listen. You have to read the book. You have to go to conferences. You have to work at it to understand what we're talking about.
Right. Because right off the bat, if you started with that, if you led with that, people would be very much turned off, but it makes sense because it is literally giving back to the thing that allowed us to exist in the first place.
That's right.
And then maybe one day when we're mature enough, we could come back to it and use it the way it was intended to be used.
Yeah, I mean, Gerard K. O'Neill started this for me way back when. And you know, a lot of my friends who get the idea say, yeah, so then we come to Earth like we'd go to a national park.
Right. Oh, that's so cool.
You know?
Like the Galapagos Islands.
Yeah, we go to Earth.
Wow.
To visit.
That's amazing.
A kind of ecological paradise that doesn't, we're kind of on the verge of destroying.
Right.
But if we can restore it.
And maybe keep a little section of it preserved, like part of Manhattan, as a lesson, as a cautionary tale, as this is what almost happened.
Yeah, you could keep some of it like the old days.
Right, yeah.
Again, it's a complicated story, and we're looking for many different ways to tell it. I don't think just writing a book is it. I don't think virtual reality alone is it. I mean, I think we have to try every medium and every way that you can tell a story to tell the story of this idea.
Right, and there's so many steps between 1987, the release of your book, and the future. Hopefully it's not, I almost said distant future, but I don't want to be negative. You know, I want it to be something that's progressive because I believe the same things. And I think a lot of the people that are here, you know, which they're affectionately called space nerds, I think they have the same philosophy, which is fantastic. So I have to let you go, but thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Mr. White, Frank.
My pleasure.
It's been an honor, and we'll see you soon. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.